Playing with a light racket has many benefits, but it also has drawbacks. So today I'm gonna show you my 5 favorite light rackets of 2025 and explain what you gain and lose with each one. Hello players, I'm Pablo and I welcome you to a new 4Set. There's no rule that determines the weight to consider a racket light. But there is a rule when you buy a paddle racket, and that is to use the code 4Set at Paddle Market to save 10% off. But for me, a lightweight racket is one that weighs a maximum of 360 grams, and that is why none of today's rackets exceed that weight. In the past, wooden rackets could weigh between 450 and 500 grams. Thanks to the evolution of materials, the weight has been decreasing, and today we can find 100% functional racket of 360 grams or less. In fact, there are professional players who play with lightweight rackets. For example, LeBron, although he now plays with 375, in the past he played with 360. In his case, the weight has been increasing, but there are also opposite cases. For example, Sanjo used to play with a 400 gram racket and today with a 370 gram one. The reasons are different in each case, but let's understand what benefits and drawbacks playing with a lightweight racket offers. And the main benefit, logically, is maneuverability. The less a racket weighs, if the weight is well distributed and it doesn't have an extreme balance, we will notice that it takes less effort to move it. So for quick movements, we feel it's great, like at the net or in a volley exchange. We will also gain control since we won't be late to the impact point. There are rackets that, because they are harder to move, we don't hit the ball well neither in time nor in place. And finally, and almost most importantly, a lightweight racket will be less injurious than a heavy racket. 10 or 15 grams in one shot are not noticeable, but in a 2-hour high-intensity match, that can mean the difference between getting injured or not. But using a lightweight racket also has some drawbacks. And the principal one is power, since with less mass we will generate less power. Let's imagine two rackets with the same materials but with different weights. With the same acceleration, you will generate more power with the heavy racket than with the lightweight one. But this has a trick, because if you are not able to accelerate the racket with the same energy, you lose power. For example, I get more power with the Coyo Motion than with the Coyo Pro because those extra 15 grams of weight take away too much acceleration for me. Another negative point of lightweight rackets is stability, and that is that having less mass, we will notice that it moves more on us. And the clearest example on this is a block. With a heavy racket, we will be able to block more firmly than with a lighter racket. And finally, a main doubt. Does a lightweight racket break before a heavy one? Well, not necessarily, although it depends on the racket, because there are brands that, to make a racket weight less, incorporate fewer layers of fiber and therefore make them more fragile. Alright, okay Pablo, so what are your favorite lightweight rackets of 2025? Well, I have selected 5 rackets, trying to make them distinct from each other even though they are all lightweight. And so you can see that they are different. Look at the differences in ball output among all of them. Although slightly, there are differences, and this will give us clues about how the rackets will perform on the court. The first is the only racket that a girl actually uses, in this case Martita Ortega, but anyone can really use, and this is the Adidas Crossit Light 3.4. Remember that I have configured all the rackets the same weight, removing the stock grip and put it on 2 over grips. So with that configuration, this racket weighs 356 grams and has a balance of 25.5 centimeters. It is by far the softest in this ranking thanks to its EVA soft rubber and 24K aluminized carbon. And it is really one of the softest rackets this season because notice the sound. It sounds too much, and notice how easily it sinks in the hardness test because it hardly takes any effort. And unlike many other Adidas rackets, this one has a long 13 grip, so it moves very well. Another thing to highlight positively is the rough surface, which for me is much more noticeable than on the metal one. With the gold 4Set at Paddle Market, it costs 270 euros, but now, what stands out on the court? Well, with this Adidas, we have to forget about power, as it is one of the less powerful rackets I have tried this season. But at the same time, it's one of the most comfortable. You start rallying with it and you feel the ball so much with a super pleasant sensation. It has a lot of ball output and you feel it helps you generate speed with little effort in any shot, especially in defense. But that also penalizes control at the same time. So if you are looking for a super comfortable racket with a lot of ball output and you don't care about its power, the Crossit Lite it is a very good option. We continue with the second racket, a completely different one, the Bablat Air Viper. With my configuration it weighs 360 grams and has a balance of 26.4 centimeters. It is a much harder racket than the Adidas because it uses 16K carbon and XEVA, a dual density rubber. And notice the sound of this racket. Can you see the difference with Adidas? To also see the difference, look at the hardness test. It's much harder for me to sink the Bablat than the Adidas. The Air Viper has the largest grip on the market with an enviable 14 centimeters. With the gold 4Set at Padel Market it cost 288 euros, but now, how is it on the court? Well, it has nothing to do with the Adidas. It's a much harder, more technical racket that contributes more in a high intensity shots. It's gonna be harder for us to defend with than with the Adidas due to less ball output, but in return we'll gain much more control. Also, the sweet spot is smaller and sometimes it's hard to hit it well. But remember that since all these are lightweight rackets, you won't hit it that badly due to timing during the match. Therefore, I prefer the extra performance that the Bablat can give in high-intensity shots over the comfort of the Adidas. So if you are looking for a hard racket with a very long handle and little ball output, the Bablat Air Viper can be a good option. Third racket, the new Wilson Bella V3 LS, in my opinion, the most beautiful racket. With my configuration it weighs 360 grams and has a balance of 26.2 centimeters. It's the second softest racket in the ranking and listen to the sound. And compare how easily it sinks in the hardness test. Well, compared to the Bella Pro, it swaps 24K carbon for fiberglass and you can really tell that this one is significantly softer. The grip measures 12.5 centimeters and is very wide by default, something I'm not entirely convinced by, to be honest. But it's true that the improvement they made to the rough surface in this version is really good. With the gold 4Set at Padel Market it costs 188 euros, but how does it perform on the court? Well, the sensations are very similar to the Adidas because it's a comfortable racket in defense with decent ball output but don't ask for much power. Because when you try to hit harder, block powerful shots from your opponent, the racket falls short and you lose control. It is true that it's a bit more stable than the Adidas, but with so much ball output, it's difficult to control the ball in certain situations. So in this case, if you are looking for a beautiful design soft racket with good ball output and a nice rough surface, the Wilson Bella V3 LS is a good option. There are two rackets left in the ranking and they are very different from each other. The head Coyo Motion is the lightweight version of Arturo's racket. It weighs 354 grams and has a balance of 26.8 centimeters. It's the hardest to move in the ranking and the most technical of all, but in return is the one you can get the most performance out of. It combines carbon with fiberglass and has a 12 centimeter grip. The rough surface is 3D with the crown logo, but it could be much improved. With the gold 4Set at Padel Market it has a price of 283 euros, but what happens on the court? If I had to pick one racket from this ranking, it would be this Coyo Motion. It is true that it's not as comfortable as the Adidas or the Wilson, but you don't need it to be. Because the Coyo Motion is made for attacking and doesn't demand as much physically as the Pro version, while at the same time it uses the same materials and it shows as it's truly a very powerful racket despite being lightweight. What I explained earlier happens here because I can accelerate the Coyo Pro well and in the end I get more power out of the Coyo Motion. And to be honest, this is a rocket both in volleys, bandejas and smashes. But points to improve for future versions the rough surface, and if they increase the grip by 1 centimeter more, I will love it. Therefore, if you really like to attack, are looking for a hard, powerful racket and don't mind it being demanding, the head Coyo Motion is a very good option. Only one racket remains in the ranking and it's completely different from the Coyo Motion. In fact, it's from its arch nemesis, Fede Chingoto. Because the Bullpan Neuron is the lightest racket in the ranking at 344 grams and 25.5 centimeters balance, but there's a trick here. Because the racket is sold at 365 to 375 grams, but that weight includes the ESA core, which weighs 14 grams. So if you don't like ESA core like Chingoto or me, the racket will be under 360 grams for you. And if you also remove the factory grip like I do, it becomes an ultra lightweight racket. It has 3K carbon and multi-EVA dual density rubber and a 13.5 centimeters grip. This version is the 2024 model, and the only difference from this to the 2025 is that this doesn't have a rough surface. But to be honest, the rough surface of the 2025 model is a 3D one that is barely noticeable. So I would prefer to buy this one for 134 euros with the code 4Set at Padel Market. It's a racket of intermediate hardness, as you can hear. And it has normal ball output, but it has a dry, very characteristic feel that I love. And look how this Neuron racket performs on the hardness test. But Pablo, how does Chingoto's racket perform on the court? Well, the lightweight and low balance are very noticeable, because it's the easiest to move and it's literally ideal for volley exchange, just like Chingoto. I really like the dry feel of this racket, but forget about getting much out of it for smashes. But where it shines 100% is in control, thanks to its maneuverability, sweet spot, and just right ball output. Therefore, if you want a very lightweight racket, the cheapest of all, with a dry feel and a lot of control, the Neuron is a good option. So these are my 5 favorite lightweight rackets of 2025. Which one did I miss? Leave your opinion in the comments, and thank you so much for watching the video. See you in the next one. Ciao!